Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight to the library. We're going to get right to the interesting part of the portion, but before we do, I want to ask you a couple of quick questions. What did the fish say when he hit a wall? Damn. What do you call a bear with no ears? B. You'll get that one on the way home. Why don't scientists like atoms? Because they make up everything. Now those jokes may not be funny, but they have something very fun about them. They're all written by AI. So I want to welcome you to AI and Society. Community Television and the Santa Cruz County Libraries had partnered on a 3-part series of panel discussions exploring AI. And tonight, the focus is on education. We are seeing AI rapidly revolutionize the classroom, and some say it's poised to maybe change education and learning. According to a study by Common Sense Media, parents and students are optimistic about AI, but they also feel that there could be, and not just the potential, but they just have the feeling that there may be a downside to it. And both feel that students may become dependent on technology, and maybe that would sacrifice learning itself. Now, in an Ed Week Research Center survey, nearly half the educators who responded, now it's just the ones that responded, they said AI would have a negative or very negative impact on teaching and learning in the next 5 years. Common Sense's founder and CEO, James P. Stayer, commented, it's very clear, he commented on these studies. He said it's very clear that parents and all of society have a lot of catching up to do and need reliable resources and clear rules to deal with the impact of AI on our society and on our kids. And that's what we're here to do tonight. We have a great panel of experts who I'll introduce soon, and they will lead you through the applications and implications of AI in our schools. After they've all spoken, you'll have a chance to ask questions. Please jot down your questions during the talks. You can pass them to the end at the time when Q&A starts, and they'll be passed to me and I will address the panel. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first speaker, Jason Borgen. Mr. Borgen is the Chief Technology and Innovations Officer of our County Office of Education. He's worked with schools for over 20 years as a teacher and then as a Technology Information Center for Administration Leadership Project, where he supported school administrators across California to leverage technology in schools. Jason went on to spend 3 years leading curriculum and technology programs in a small school district in Silicon Valley, and currently, Jason is leading technology, innovation, and communication at the Santa Cruz County Office of Education. Please welcome Jason Borgen.
Thank you, Becca, and thank you for, I'm glad to be here and support Santa Cruz County students ultimately and our community around using technology to ultimately increase our efforts to create our students an ethical environment and support them in our future, next generation in their career development. I want to talk a little bit about the disruption that artificial intelligence has created in our world. ChatGPT came to the mainstream in November 2022. And so less than a year ago, 10 months ago, it has risen to more millions of users faster than any other technology has in the course of the last 50 years. And so we are learning just as quick as we can to how this can support our educational environment. It's a disruptive technology. It is something that's going to disrupt our society, and it has already disrupted our society, but it's also disrupting our schools as well. And we want to use this as an opportunity to use, just like any technology, to showcase how this can benefit our students, our schools, and ultimately create a relevant opportunity for students to use this in their career development. Because ultimately one of the goals of our schools is to prepare students for their careers. As we know, in the next 10 years, AI may disrupt careers that we think are very relevant now, may not be relevant in 10 years, 15 or 20 years from now. And I just talked to somebody in our community who's a software developer, and he's concerned how AI is going to put him out of business. 5 years ago, we saw a huge need for software development and people who code. in our environment, and that has shifted just in the past 8 months because of artificial intelligence. So how schools prepare students for their future careers that are unknown as we utilize artificial intelligence. But just like any technology, 20 years ago when I started in education, email was a new thing for a lot of teachers to be able to communicate. And they didn't want to use email. They wanted their notification, their memos to be put in their inbox where they actually had to physically go to the teacher's lounge to pull the memo out and look at that. And that has shifted in the last 20 years where we're reliant, all educators and all really society is reliant now on email communication to gather information. It is just a tool. And just like other things in education, we've seen content standards. 20, 30 years ago, teachers can teach what they want in the classroom. There was no mandate around here's what you need to be teaching, here's the skills that you need to develop. And so content standards have shifted our educational environment. 10 years ago, was it 15 years ago now, iPads had shifted our education environment. People realized the need for consuming-based technology like iPads to create multimedia, to consume information quickly, to access information. And people were hesitant to integrate these iPads in the classroom and only wanted maybe one for the classroom. Now we're seeing one-to-one Chromebooks. Every student from elementary to high school has a device in their hands that they can use at any time. Why? Because most of the curriculum has switched from textbooks to online. And we're seeing that, why? Because it's a tool, it's a technology tool to make us more efficient and to keep it more up to date. Textbook is written in stone, and most school districts have textbook for 8 years, and some of the content in that textbook cannot be updated annually. When content is online, it can be updated nonstop annually. And so it makes it much more relevant for an online curriculum that's going to keep it more modern and to the point of what the students need to learn. 8 years ago or so, spell check really became the trouble child in our schools. And we've all used spell check before and rely on spell check now. And some school districts banned students from using spell check 10 years ago. They want to turn it off. Students should not be using spell check, they should know how to spell. Now students and teachers and our community relies on spell check as a technology tool to support our efforts. So technology continues to evolve through this process. Then Grammarly, make her of Grammarly. Grammarly is a grammar checker that checks now for your grammar and punctuation. That's come about 5 or 4 years ago. Now a lot of us rely on Grammarly. You look at journalists, you look at people who write for a living or who write papers, doctorates who do the research. They rely on these grammar checkers to support them. So our role is to support teachers, support students to utilize the tools that are necessary to get their job done in the most efficient way. Again, it's a technology. Technology is a tool. This tool can be scary though. This tool, especially with the idea of artificial intelligence, is it's a computer that's trying to think like a human, taking millions and millions of data sources, computing that into actual response based upon a specific prompt. And every response is different. So the concern is there's really no way to analyze that and to see if students are plagiarizing, if students are actually doing their own research. And so with that comes responsibilities of schools and districts to look at policies, look at opportunities to utilize this in a way to help students use this as a tool and not take advantage of the situation. And so we, as educators and at the County Office of Education, are looking to support this effort to build awareness around artificial intelligence, to develop policies around artificial intelligence, to train teachers on how to use artificial intelligence to increase their productivity and work smarter, not harder in their work. And ultimately support our community in developing our future citizens who are going to use the technology for the better good. I want to give you an example. I have school-age children. I have a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old. My 11-year-old loves to be online. And just like when I was a child, I loved video games. Again, it's all about still, just with any technology, no matter what the technology and the tool is, it's about moderation and teaching students about how to be a true digital citizen. And so as new technologies evolve, we still need to teach our students and our adults what balance means. And so we continue to do that. My 11-year-old wanted to use ChatGPT because he had a homework assignment just 2 weeks ago where he had to write a summary of a book, of a short story. The short story was written in 2023. He went to ChatGPT 3.5, which is actually looking at data sets from 2021, and he typed this, give me a summary of this short story. Well, it said, I don't know what that is, because this short story was written in 2023. Well, phew, ChatGPT can't help him. Well, then he went to Google Bard, another AI tool. Well, Google Bard looks at the real internet, so he was able to get a summary. So I coached him and said, well, look at this. Because he didn't know how to write a summary, he didn't know what a summary was. He didn't really understand that concept. He looked at the summary, took that information, and said, okay, look at that, read it, what do you think? We talked about what that means. So what I felt this tool did is catalyze the effort for him to write his own summary afterwards. So he looked at that and was able to truly write his own summary with some guidance, quicker than I would be able to do it just by trying to explain to him what a summary is. So it was a tool to make the job to get done quicker. It catalyzed his thinking, his critical thinking skills. It didn't supplant it. And that's what we want to do. We want this to be an effective tool to work smarter, not harder. Again, our role is to build awareness, build capacity within our educational system, and build relevancy in our students' work so they can be better servants in our future in our society. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. Our next speaker, Elizabeth? No, okay, Stephanie. Okay, sorry. Change in plan. So our next speaker is Stephanie Sumarna. She's an education tech and innovation teacher on special assignment with the County Office of Education. Ms. Sumarna has been in education for more than 11 years. She started as a middle school teacher in Gilroy, teaching integrated course on English language and social studies. From there, she went on to work as both an upper and lower elementary teacher. She joined the Santa Cruz County Office of Education in 2020, and she has always been passionate about utilizing ed tech and innovative teaching practices to support her students. Stephanie works to help bridge curriculum and technology as an ed tech and innovation coach. She aims to support, empower, and inspire teachers and administrators. Please welcome Stephanie Sumarna.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here tonight to be speaking with you all. I'm going to share just a little bit about one of my first memories of technology because I feel like that really helps to frame my mindset around artificial intelligence and recent changes. So my father was always really into technology, very excited when new things came around, and I remember one of the first computers that he brought home. He placed it in a room in our house, and he said, come and look at it with me. Let's play, let's touch the buttons, let's see what it does. And so I think that mindset of curiosity and play really carried with me throughout the rest of my life when approaching technology. And that sort of allowed me to be where I am today. So as Becca mentioned, started my career in education as a classroom teacher and really was excited about the way that technology could enhance what I was able to do as a teacher in the craft of teaching. So I was able to take things that maybe were not as exciting or interesting to students. I could add an element of technology into my lesson, and I could really increase student engagement. And so then, as Becca mentioned, I was hired at the County Office of Education in 2020. I was one of the few people who was genuinely excited at the topic of remote learning because I got really interested in this opportunity to sort of rethink the way that we've been teaching and to think outside of the box. So thinking about ways that we could offer students different ways to engage with the content. And suddenly it was like the world became our classroom. I was a third grade teacher at the time when we switched to remote learning, and I got to think about how I could engage families and students together to make their home space a learning environment. And that was really exciting for me. And so I joined the County Office of Education as a distance learning teacher on special assignment and took that enthusiasm and excitement for sort of making lemonade out of lemons, thinking about what the possibility was around technology, and supported teachers in Santa Cruz County. Now, I'm equally excited with the developments in artificial intelligence because I think that they pose that same opportunity. In my role as the Ed Tech and Innovation TOSA, I work to support teachers in Santa Cruz County, TK through 12, with integrating technology into their classroom and to think a little bit differently about the classroom practices that they have. artificial intelligence has an amazing and unique opportunity for teachers to think about things that they've always done and then approach it with a new lens of curiosity of, is there a different way that I could be doing things? So I love the way that Becca started with telling us jokes that were designed by artificial intelligence. Like, that's the perfect example. My recommendation to educators, to families, to parents, to students is that they get on these tools and they explore a little bit and explore the capabilities of what they can do, and then naturally they'll bump up against the limitations, right? Just like how Jason described that anecdote of his son hopping onto AI, thinking that he's going to be able to produce the summary, and then discovering that the data that ChatGPT is using is outdated for what his needs are. So in that teachable moment, he learned about artificial intelligence. He also learned about some of its limitations. In supporting teachers in our county, there's been, as Jason mentioned, this huge momentum, this huge increase and boom in artificial intelligence right now. And so it's really been a passion of mine, sort of inside and outside of work hours now, to just devour any information I can find on artificial intelligence, articles, podcasts, teacher blogs. How are people using it? I like to describe it a little bit as the Wild West of AI at the moment. Things are happening and changing so rapidly that I might recommend or share a tool with educators one day, and then in the span of a week, another tool has developed something that's better than that. So things are changing really quickly, and I think it's important to come back to that idea of curiosity and opening the tool and exploring and getting an idea of what it's capable of. In doing so, I've been excited to share with teachers that there are a lot of things that artificial intelligence can do that support them in their work as educators and can help them do what Jason described as work smarter, not harder. So there are a lot of administrative tasks that educators are given that they are expected to do outside of class hours, and artificial intelligence can really help to streamline some of those. For example, I drove straight from a training session for teachers on AI to this meeting, and we were reviewing some ways that you can use artificial intelligence to create rubrics. So rubrics are ways that you can create expectations for students on an assignment that you can use to measure their performance. And ChatGPT is able to create a rubric that would typically take a teacher at least an hour to create in less than a minute. Like Jason mentioned with his son, is it perfect when it comes out? No, you look through it with your lens as an educator and you revise, but it gives you that boost, that starting point to help you to do things more efficiently. Another part of AI that I'm really excited about is its ability to support personalizing learning for students. A lot of people are likening it to every student having access to a tutor, whereas typically families would have to pay for a tutor to tutor their student. Raise your hand if you're familiar with Khan Academy. Okay. So Khan Academy, this is just an example, is beta testing right now a tutor feature that's driven by AI directly in its Khan Academy interface called Khanmigo. And so as a student works through the lessons in Khan Academy, this AI tool is then assessing their performance and giving them personalized tips and suggestions for what to do next. So it's like a human tutor is sitting next to your student, helping to guide them and give them tips and tricks on how to access the content. There are a lot of other platforms that are developing similar tools, but Khanmigo I like to share because a lot of people are familiar with Khan Academy. Moving back to talking about teachers, Jason mentioned that ChatGPT has come out. It's a large language model, so basically what it does is it scrapes data from the internet and then it predicts, when you give it a prompt or a question, it predicts what is an expected result based on the data that it's pulling. There are now educational entrepreneurs that are taking that same concept and they're sort of providing scaffolds to ChatGPT for classroom teachers. So they're coming up with tools that take that same idea and they already have prompts that are typical for teachers. So there's one that's called Magic School, another one called EduAid, where teachers can simply input a little bit of information about the subject that they're teaching or the grade level that they're teaching, press a button, and they can get subplans or activity ideas or lesson ideas. So right now it's really limited by what you imagine that you could ask it to give you. Of course, it's also important to address concerns that have arisen, like Jason mentioned, the concern around plagiarism or cheating. And so what I've been talking about with teachers is just really being mindful of the data that they input into these tools, and that they also think carefully about how to discuss with their students the ethical use of the output from AI. But I'm going to pause on that because I know Elizabeth is going to talk a little bit more about students and their use of AI. I just want to share that if you haven't already opened up a tool, that's my assignment for each of you tonight after the session. Sorry, teacher habits die hard. I recommend that you go home and, if you haven't opened up Bard or you haven't opened up ChatGPT, think of something that you need. I had someone who was going on a trip to Spain with their mother who had mobility issues, and she was going for 5 weeks. Her mother was a foodie. She wanted a foodie tour that would be mobility issue friendly, and ChatGPT was able to spit out an itinerary. There's other people who have said, oh, I'm trying to really improve surfing. Can you give me a recommendation for 10 exercises that will improve my ability on the surfboard? So think of something that you've been curious about, go home and see what it suggests. That's what I recommend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Stephanie Simrona. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Shaw, computer science teacher on special assignment. Ms. Shaw has been an educator at Santa Cruz County Office of Education for 13 years. She currently coordinates computer science programs and events for K through 12 students. Elizabeth is also an associate professor at Cabrillo College in the Computer Information Systems Department. Additionally, she is the lead curriculum developer and faculty mentor for the Bay Area Cyber League. Elizabeth has a passionate heart for social justice and educational equity, particularly as it relates to technology and computer science education. Please welcome Elizabeth Shaw.
Thank you so much, and I'm really excited that we started with Jason talking at the 30,000 foot level about policy and what's happening in our county. And then we moved into what the teachers have and what Stephanie is providing for teachers. And then I'm going to focus on what the students do and how AI has shifted in the last 3 to 4 years. So Jason alluded to the shift in potentially programming might be going away. Well, one of the things that we talk about in the classroom, this is what teachers say, if students are talking about it, it's already old. And if it's a new technology that the teachers are using, the students got it 6 months ago or more. That's what happened with a lot of the technology, because students have smart technology, they have smart devices, they can download anything in a heartbeat. And the teachers are looking at the lesson plan of what they started last month. The students are looking at what's available on the internet last second. So that's how things can shift and change in education. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the recent technological leaps that have truly transformed the way education is looked at, is viewed, and how it's actually handled in the classroom. So of course, personal computing, that was one of the big shifts. We already mentioned it. Jason went through a really good timeline. Smart device technology was a fundamental shift, but let's talk about that internet. Let's talk about that Google browser. There were people who were in education who were incredibly concerned. We can't let students have access to a browser because they'll just start looking at information and they won't learn it. Compare that to the Encyclopedia Britannicas that used to have all the data A through Z. It's the same concept. The fear behind it is students won't learn. And every bit of technology leap has that same fear. They won't learn. And I would say let's reframe that a little bit. Students can learn different ways to apply their learning. And that's what technology does for us. I want you to think back to the first time you ever used a calculator. Obviously, there's the on button. But in order to add 3 plus 5, you had to know which buttons were 3, which were 5, and what did that plus sign mean? So you already had to know mathematical computational thinking in order to even operate that calculator. And so when people got really upset in the classroom, no, they can't use calculators in the classroom, they won't know how to add. Yes, they will. They simply won't need to know how to calculate. But they will certainly know order of operations and they'll understand mathematical thinking. So again, I want to just focus back in on the internet and what ChatGPT has done. So of these leaps, the fear is they won't learn. What technology does is it transforms learning into application. And that's really the key between taking information in. It really does set apart human from the AI. Because at its core, the AI, like Stephanie said, scrapes data and comes up with the best predictive answer. It's like a radio signal, in and out. A human can do completely different things. And when somebody is learning, when a student in the classroom understands that this is just somebody's data set combination, it's not an actual piece of applied knowledge, they can say, oh, I see how that's a tool. The same way a calculator is the tool, the same way the iPad is the tool. They can use the information and they're no longer just receiving and spitting back out the most important piece of information. And that's really the shift in what GPT can do. Now, GPT came out and it was a flurry of concerns. We already talked about plagiarism. We already talked about not learning. So I teach computer science at the high school and the college level. And because I'm in cybersecurity, I always have to be sort of on the forefront of what's coming. So even before ChatGPT was sort of mainstream, in my classes we were already studying AI because AI has been around since the 1600s. If you think about when the first models of computational programming, we had in the early 60s, in 1997 was when the first IBM's Deep Blue beat the chess master of the world. So AI and then Alexa and Siri, they've all been around since 2007. They've just not been, people weren't as afraid of them as ChatGPT. So in the classes that I teach, we study the entire unit of artificial intelligence from the beginning of the history of AI and to who were some of the people on the forefront. We move from there into what is a neural network. And a neural network is the only way to compare a human brain to an AI brain. And that's sort of like comparing, when you think of a jellyfish, there's no real brain. It's just some cells together. So we go through what a neural network does, and then we talk really specifically about machine learning, because machine learning is what makes the AI work as it should. From machine learning, we talk about how does that data get in there? Where does the data come from? Well, the data comes from other humans who put data out there. It's culled from human interactions. Then after we talk about big data and how that works, we go into something that's really important, which is bias. AI bias. And AI bias is what is going to drive and shift some of the negative impacts that we'll have with AI. Because any predictive model is only as good as the opinion of the data set. And as we know, there are marginalized citizens in our country who are continually left out of certain data sets because they're simply overlooked. So if there's an AI that is only has data from one specific demographic or age group, they'll make the determination that this one age group is the best or the worst. And so that's the AI bias that we have. There's one, I have also, I'm not going to call it an assignment, I'm going to call it a follow-up. If you're interested in playing with AI in a fun way, there's this organization called code.org. And they're amazing. They're also partnering with Khan Academy. They have this activity called AI for Oceans. And it's geared toward the lower elementary school, but I have my high school and college students do it because it actually is one of the best ways to look at how AI works. And essentially what you do is you're trying to solve a problem because there's too much trash in the ocean. So you're going to train your learning model the difference between fish and trash. And as you go through and you're looking at photos, this is a fish, this is trash, and you go through and you train your model and you give it hundreds and hundreds of tries. Then you look at, well, and let's talk about bias. Let's talk about what if there's bad data going in and one predictive model says all the fish are trash and all the trash are fish and builds a machine that destroys all the fish in one part of the ocean because it thinks that trash are fish and fish are trash. That's how those things can work. And you can look at AI for Oceans on code.org. It's an amazing resource. You can do it yourself. You can have your kids or grandkids or any of your school age groups. The other thing that we talk about are some other pitfalls, which are very important. And this is the deep fakes. And the deep fake is where AI actually creates fake videos, fake information, and fake news reports to spread misinformation. And even our U.S. Department of State and the CIA, they're really trying to get a handle on deep fakes. And deep fakes can be easily faked using AI. And there are actually video programs who can create remarkably like images that look just like President Obama talking about something, or any famous person saying something that really isn't true. So the deep fakes can be a pitfall. You can also take a look at computer generated art. If you've ever looked at any art that a computer can generate, AI can't generate hands very well. It doesn't do well with babies' faces. There's certain limitations that only a true artist will be able to render a human hand or render the face of a baby. So you really have to see, this is what you can use as, or what I encourage students to use to apply their critical thinking skills to notice the differences between AI generated and human generated. And we can spend a lot of time comparing the two and finding where it works for them. The other thing is we also go into chatbots, and I actually have students create their own chatbots, either using a simple code or using Python or any type of equipment to make their own chatbot. And they have their chatbot say, "Hi, I'm Elizabeth, can I help you?" And then the person enters something in, and they didn't even know that half the time when they're talking to somebody online, that's not even a real person. They didn't understand. Even some of my adult college students didn't understand that it's usually the first 10 questions aren't even a live person at all. So showing them how to make a chatbot gets them to think about, oh, that might be a chatbot. And they're going to be different with their interactions. They're going to be thinking about it differently. All in all, the AI in education unit that we teach and that we are giving to teachers to implement in their classrooms, it gives students the curiosity that Stephanie has mentioned. It removes the barrier of you can't do that in these 6 hours, but you can do AI every other place except school. That's sort of an artificial lock, and it doesn't teach students how to use things ethically and responsibly. So if a district decides to shut down access to ChatGPT while the student is in class for 6 hours, it can actually be detrimental, because then outside of class time, they won't have another adult walking them through using critical thinking. They'll just use the technology on their own. So it's really, I think, incumbent upon educators to identify good policy, to identify specific pitfalls and roadblocks, and to show the students what AI is, how it can help them, how to use it ethically, and how to understand what the technology is and what are the differences between AI and human, and how you can utilize them as a tool, just like a calculator, just like an iPad, just like an electronic digital pencil, and you can still use all the other tools. You can still hand draw. You can still handwrite your calculations. You could still use an abacus if you wanted to. All of those things are tools. And we, I think, as educators, it's incumbent upon us to show the community members, the families, and the students how to use the tools in the most efficient, safe, and ethical way, so that when the students graduate high school, when they graduate from college, they're not tossed out in the world not understanding the current technology and not prepared for the future careers after they graduate college. And it's really one thing that we can do. We can instill this embracing of technology while explaining the limitations and still encouraging the whole child and the whole thought and the whole understanding of their place in the classroom, in their community, and in society. So, thank you very much for
Thank you, Elizabeth.
TED Talk.
All right. Now, if you have questions, please write them down. Someone will come around and get them, and we'll pass them along to the panel. For the moment, I will get the ball rolling, and we can start having a discussion as you write. So, it's really fascinating stuff, and a nice review of all the things we take for granted that were real life-changing, like Grammarly and spell check, things like that. Spell check was wonderful for me. I realized why I make mistakes, and that it taught me how to learn to spell. So enough about me. What stage are we in Santa Cruz County in implementing AI? Where are we now?
So in the schools, I think it's happening in piecemeal. Some schools actually, they by law, by compliance or to receive federal funding, they actually have to have content filters in place for inappropriate content. That can be defined what inappropriate content is at the district level. And so last spring when this all happened, a lot of school districts blocked and filtered out all these AI tools. And they realized that, wow, students are using this outside, as Elizabeth mentioned, already using this outside. How do we embrace this inside the school? So we trained one of our biggest districts, Pajaro Valley Unified School District, this past summer on how to use it effectively as an instructional tool with teachers, and how to use it with students, and how to think differently about our assignments in the classroom. Instead of something that easily students can put into an AI tool and regurgitate an answer, how do we rethink our assignments as a teacher to make it almost impossible to regurgitate information through these tools? So it's also thinking differently in our educational assignments as well. And so they opened it up in this district, and they're starting to utilize it more and more in this case. We are also facilitating think tanks with teachers across the county and bringing educators together around this effort to look at ways that they can use it effectively and share ideas with other teachers across the county. And third, obviously the most important part, is policy development. We're going to be working with school district administrators and leaders with some partners and advisors to develop AI policies at the school district and school site level as well.
Okay, well, you've talked a little bit about how you'll be getting students engaged and how you've gotten students to come along with technology over time. And I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit on how you can help students deeper engage in the topics they're interested in by using AI. Without cheating.
Yeah, the one way to do it is, I think Stephanie said it best, to spark the curiosity. One of the ways to get a student engaged is to ask them what they think. Because as soon as the conversation is shifted to what they're interested in, away from what the teacher wants them to be interested in, they're immediately engaged. And so identifying within the curricular area, you know, you can't be in history and say, I want science, you know, within the curricular area, and there are places you can have inroads into technology in every single subject matter. Every single area of what we teach in the curriculum in California can have integrated computer science. And in fact, that's what our goal is to integrate computer science standards every grade, TK through high school, every subject. Artificial intelligence is what we've been calling the hook. Stephanie, Jason, and I were most recently trained on artificial intelligence in education. And one of the things we thought was, we want this to go everywhere. No one's going to come to a big meeting unless we have a really big hook. AI is the hook. So with the student, one way to engage them is to give them an AI tool that will connect with what they're interested in. There's Dolly 2, which is another chat GPT. That is generating images. And they also can generate images in the style of any painter, any master painter. And so you can say, give me a picture of a duck eating a taco on a rocket in the style of Picasso. And then it will generate a duck eating a taco on a rocket in a Picasso style. And so that can be given to people who are wanting to learn more about arts. You can have other pieces, and by giving them an option of one or two AI technologies to let them explore and give them an assignment, compare and contrast this tool with that tool. Which worked better for you? Which would you recommend to a sibling or a friend? And get them involved. Ask them, what are you interested in? Give them an AI tool to go explore, and say, hey, can you give a presentation to the school or to the class on what you learned? Because I really think what you learned about the tool is going to really help all of us learn. So get it in their hands, ask them to give feedback, and ask them what they're interested in.
And one thing to note, we have a really big problem, not only in this county, in this state, but really globally around student engagement in schools. We have a huge attendance problem, not only locally, but globally. And so we have a whole campaign at the county office at attendance.santacruzcoe.org to bring students back to school, but really they're not engaged in classroom. We're seeing that. So using these tools that they're using outside of home, inside the classroom, is going to bring them back to school and show them that we're relevant inside of our schools.
Can I build on that? I'm just thinking of an example of one of the really interesting things that you can do with ChatGPT and other tools like the image generators is you can ask it to take on a role, sort of how Elizabeth described a cat on a rocket eating a taco in the style of Picasso. So in that instance, your prompt is that you're asking the generative AI to take on the role of Picasso. I've seen educators that have used that to ask their students to have ChatGPT take on a role of other historical figures. So there's a common example of people asking ChatGPT to write a sonnet in the style of Shakespeare about something totally silly.
Relevant today.
Yeah.
Right?
But you can get ChatGPT to take on these roles of historical figures and bring them a little bit more to life for your students, and then get to analyze, does this seem like a sonnet that Shakespeare would have written? Why or why not? Like, what are some of the qualities that feel consistent and something that Shakespeare would have written? And then they're thinking critically about that person and also bringing them a little bit to life today.
Oh, very fun. I love that idea. So we have a question from the audience. As AI tech advances and as it is used more frequently, is it not possible that some of the critical thinking skills will disappear from society in general? I can't get past the not learning. First, you need to have reading comprehension.
So the first, if you look at thinking skills and cognitive ability, the lowest level is knowledge, just information. The highest level is actually critical thinking. And so being able to work with students to evaluate the information, we talked about, is this really true information? Is it biased? How valid is it? That needs to be explicitly taught in the classroom about AI tools, about everything. We've been doing that for years with internet research. Not everything in the internet is true. Some students think it is. We're trying to train them that's not. Some teachers think it is. We're working with teachers to understand they have to use what they call the CRAP method to see if it's crap. Credibility, reliability of the author, accuracy, how accurate is it, and what's their point of view, why are they doing this? And so using some acronyms and ways to teach them about how to evaluate information critically is the first step to be critical thinkers. And so just like publishers, again, before when we had libraries, we thought the books or the information, they were always the experts. We always had biased authors at some point as well. Textbooks, even in textbook companies, we don't know who actually wrote those texts. There could be bias in those textbooks. But we didn't think about, we have to think critically about, is this information true or false? They just give it to us. So actually it's more so students are developing those critical thinking skills now if it's explicitly trained in schools, if we're working with them on.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
I did want to add to that is that it's the application of knowledge that shifts the rote memorization to learning. And when we talk about student learning, you can't feed facts to a person and say, okay, you learned it. You have to understand and assess their ability to use that knowledge. And even standardized tests that have, historically been the way to measure someone's ability, performing well on a test doesn't mean you can apply that when you leave high school. So I think we need to shift away from the idea that student learning is one size fits all and understand that being with them, shepherding them through using the AI tools in the classroom with a trusted adult, with someone who sort of is really looking at assessing how they're using the tool, that is going to engage them and that's going to give them learning because they're going to take that and apply it when they get home and use their social media. They're going to apply it when they get home and do other things utilizing AI.
I want to add that makes me think that one of the really important tasks is building that baseline knowledge and understanding of the tool in our students, but also in our educators that are working with our students, right? In order for our teachers in classrooms to be able to pull back that curtain and explain what the tool is and explain how it works so that our students can build those critical skills, our teachers need those skills themselves, and so that really encompasses why it's so important to really make sure that we're supporting our educators and our students in understanding.
And one thing Becca mentioned was a nonprofit called Common Sense Media. You probably heard of Common Sense Media. They're one of the leaders in looking at content and digital media and rating it and providing parents guidance and expertise. Well, they actually developed a whole curriculum for teachers to use in the classroom to help their students look at media effectively and critically. And again, it's a mandate for all public schools receiving federal funding to actually teach these skills, digital citizenship, and how to be effective consumers of information, technology, and digital media. So all schools are doing this on an annual basis with all students.
Oh, I have a good question, and I've wondered this myself from the audience. Will AI mean that the influence that Texas has on textbooks and what's in them will end?
I don't have the answer to that, but I do know that Governor Newsom just last week signed an executive order on California being the leader of artificial intelligence, and not only on the educational side, but really on the security side and how it's going to change the role of our tech companies in the state of California and how it's going to shift how California does business. And so maybe it will then trickle down to education. One of the goals of that executive order is to put on an artificial intelligence summit in 2024 under Cal Berkeley and Stanford University kind of spearheading that. So just last week, the state initiated this whole call to action executive order, and I'm assuming that education will be right under that piece as well. We'll discuss that in the future.
So you've spoken a lot about critical thinking and learning and not memorizing rote facts, but turning it into something. And one thing we've always had in the past have been open book tests, and everyone loves those. So will there be open AI tests?
That's a really good question, Becca. And one of the things that a lot of my colleagues at Cabrillo are looking at is they're trying to find. There's a school of thought. Half of them are thinking, well, I'm just going to put hidden characters in my test, so when they type it in, I'm going to know that they're cheating. And the other half are saying, why don't you just change your tests so that it's project-based and you can assess it in a different way, so they couldn't get it out of ChatGPT. You know, and it really is a way we have to focus on. Open book doesn't necessarily mean they haven't learned. It just means that they had to look it up while they were doing it. So there's nothing wrong for me, when I'm driving and something goes wrong with my car, I pull over and I open up my user's manual. I don't memorize my user's manual. I need it when I need the help and when I need to apply the information. I'm not saying that in history you shouldn't memorize certain dates and you shouldn't be expected to understand the implications of those dates in how the 1940s, the 1920s, how that drastically impacted everything. It's still very important. However, understanding how the Cold War and the space race impacted the rise of the internet and the ARPANET, that's way more interesting than saying the internet was developed in 1967. You know, talking about that. So you really have to get at, how do you measure what you assess? And maybe open book is a term that is no longer applicable when you have different assessments that assess student learning differently. And I think we've known this for a very long time, particularly with our students with special needs and our English language learner students, and also our socially disadvantaged students. They don't perform as well on multiple choice tests. They don't perform as well on standardized tests. And it's not that they don't learn it. It's not that they don't have the capacity. They just never had the opportunity as those other privileged students who are able to learn and gain the information in a different way. So we've known for a long time that how we test needs to shift. And I think this might be just another method, another way in which we can continue to improve students' experience at all levels, equitable for all students, no matter what their current situation in their home, their current situation within their socioeconomic, or what they're struggling with.
So how can we, we've had problems in Santa Cruz County in the past with some students not having internet or not having computers, and schools have done a lot to get hotspots to kids, and the library lets you do homework on their internet. How will we make AI equitable? Have you thought about that? Is there a plan for it?
There are some schools and districts that are pondering that same question. And so Jason mentioned the idea that in November, when it first came out, there were a lot of districts that had a knee-jerk reaction and blocked it. And now that they've had some time to think about that, they're thinking of that exact question. When we block AI on the devices that we provide students, then the students that are using our district-issued devices are now at a disadvantage because they cannot access AI, but students that have a device that's given to them at their home or that they have access to otherwise now can use these tools that the other students cannot. And so there are districts that have opened AI on their devices for that exact reason, trying to think about how to make these tools accessible for their students, just like they're making Chromebooks accessible for their students.
Yeah, and the pandemic, the shutdown and the remote learning showed us even more that we have an equity gap that is even more far-reaching than anyone ever expected. The gap between those who have internet and those who don't have internet, accessible and reliable outside of school, was just immense. And I know Jason can speak a little bit more to what we actually did during the pandemic, during the shutdown. And there's also, it needs to go further. It needs to go into their homes. So Cruise.io Internet, a local internet company, they actually partnered with all of the districts in Santa Cruz County, every single district, to allow home visits so they could set up home internet, high-speed home internet where it wasn't available. And
just to add to that,
Yeah.
just governor's desk, a piece of legislation just came to the governor's desk called the Digital Equity Bill of Rights, specifically around defining every person in the state of California has the right to broadband internet services. So that's going to shift how we do business here in California, making sure that's foundational to all students and even no matter what their socioeconomic status is, has that access, because we know people with internet access will ultimately outperform their peers without that in the future.
Okay, we have, in the few minutes that we have left, the 2 minutes that we have left, we have discussed the great advantage that students will get from AI and how it will propel them into the future. What do teachers get in a minute?
I'm going to say the same things. Being a teacher who utilizes AI significantly, I have much less personal time that I have to spend on my own for those administrative tasks that are continual with just a slight change. Parent communication emails, write me a memo about something, give me an agenda for an upbeat meeting including parents and other staff teachers. They'll write the memo, they'll write the agenda, they'll help me focus, it helps me organize, so I get time back. That's one thing. I get my own personal time as a teacher back, that from all the other really important things that take my mind away from things.
And more connections with students. That means more connections with students, more time to build those relationships with students, understand them better, which is really the teacher's role, is to help them learn, not to deliver content.
Yeah. And teachers will get because we're teachers because we love that moment of, aha, I get it. We love that aha moment. We're just going to continue getting it even more, and we love seeing our students successful and come back 5-10 years later. Hey, look, I got that. Now we're going to be able to do that even more. More tools, more success, more empowerment, and it just makes it will help teachers want to continue to be teachers, which is so important.
So Jason Borgen, Stephanie Sumarna, and Elizabeth Shaw are our guests tonight, and we thank them very much for their really insightful information and patience with us. And I want to remind you all that there'll be another program like this. Our second panel discussion is AI and Democracy, and that'll be on October 10th right here at the library. So let's please thank our guests.
I have one question. How big could this thing get? How big could AI get?
It's that's why the state is really looking at this deeply, and I think I don't know the answer. Nobody knows the answer, but
It could get big. It is already big. That's the thing. It is already big. We just don't know how the far-reaching